Okay, all right, I think we're ready. So, hello everybody and welcome. Today I have a special guest with me from Nepal, Sabina, and we're just going to have a chat about the situation or just a general perspective from somebody in Nepal. I got to be honest, I'm a little bit nervous because usually I prepare and I've got like a whole list of questions and I research a topic, but I've got no idea. I'm a complete, blank canvas right now, and I'm going to learn a little bit about Nepal from your perspective. And we're gonna avoid some topics that are kind of politically sensitive right now in Nepal because there's a lot of stuff going on with a lot of divisions. So we won't talk about that. But I've been really curious to find out a little bit more about your perspectives and who you are because we've been following each other for a while on Twitter also. So first of all, how about you introduce yourself, say who you are, and how if you've been in Nepal the whole time. Just a little bit about yourself because I also don't know.
Yes, I was born here. I lived here. There was a time I lived in India too for some years,
Oh, okay.
and I work as an accountant.
Oh, okay. So when you were in India, where were you living in India?
I was living in South India.
South India. Okay. All right.
Mm.
And the reason I was kind of interested in talking to you was because of some of your perspectives, which maybe don't necessarily match what some people may think. Because Nepal is kind of stuck in between potentially this kind of geopolitical fight between China and India. And it seems to get you pretty riled up sometimes. So I wanted to find out, like, you have some pretty positive views about China. And I wanted to know if it was a little bit of a process. Like, for example, if you didn't necessarily start out that way, and then you slowly kind of started seeing the situation from a different angle, like, how did that process kind of take place? And what are your thoughts in general?
Actually, recently only China has been very close to Nepal. Not that generally in ancient history of Nepal, Nepal was more closer towards China. But then later British Empire came here and things were different. But as we have depended on India for such a long time, for a very long time, and India kind of treats us not in a very well.
Okay, all right, yes, I know because I noticed you got really offended, or I saw there was one Indian news outlet who said something like, "Oh, Nepal isn't treating us like the big brother anymore," and you were kind of like, I can't remember what you said, but you were like, Why should we have treated you like that, anyways?" But there seems to be a lot of tension around that kind of them pushing their ideologies into Nepal
We
or something. I just
want
want to kind
little
of, yeah.
brother actually to be equal.
Actually, before we continue, so how many languages do you speak then? So you obviously speak English, and you speak Hindi
Yes,
then also, or
Nepali. Yes, I
okay,
speak Hindi too and Nepali too.
okay, three
I can
languages.
speak three languages. Yes.
So what is the general idea? Like, how is the situation in Nepal in terms of the general? Because a lot of countries have been kind of really brainwashed by a lot of the anti-China propaganda. Has that reached Nepal also? And has it created kind of a division where there are some people who are a little bit more negative about China also, and people that are positive? Like, what's the kind of breakup of how people look at China versus looks at India?
Majority of people in Nepal are not anti-China. Actually, Indian media has reported very bad things about Nepal too, in a very negative way. And when during our earthquake and during after that we had a blockade, they published negative news. Until today, we see negative news. Like some time ago, the interview the prime minister was also not very good, very negative, like a
Hmm.
dominating type. But majority do not have anti-China perspective because China has never harmed us in any way. I've never seen that. They've existed for
Right.
such a long time.
And the negative news about Nepal is coming from India, not from China. It doesn't seem like there's any hostility from the China side. No.
Indian media, they have their own perspective of China invades Nepal. They had a news like that some month ago,
Oh
which
yeah,
was
yeah. I saw
not
that.
true.
I saw that. Yeah, there was a news report saying like China's taken over some Nepal territory and they're building villages or something like that. Well,
The
that
headline
was
was
complete.
invade Nepal.
That's really interesting. So generally speaking, but now it seems like I think my impression I get from the outside, not understanding anything about Nepal, is that it's a pretty strategic place to use as a tool. Though it seems like a pretty ideal place for either India or for America to use as a political tool. I mean, I think I remember when Tibetan kind of radicals were being trained, they were being trained in Nepal. Like the Americans were training them in Nepal, I believe, right?
Yes, there has a lot of anti-China activities going on. And I think in 1960s, 50s, 60s, after in a place called Mustang, which borders China, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of Khampa people were trained by USA. They used to fly them towards Mustang. And there they launched a lot of anti-China activities. But after Nepal knew about all this, they had some 9,000 people were there, and they had a lot of weapons, and after Nepal army knew about this, they surrendered. A lot of people even killed themselves. Actually, of the Kampas
Oh,
people killed
really?
themselves. They didn't want to be. They didn't want to fight with Nepal army.
So,
But no matter what, these kind of activities are not allowed. It's like
yeah.
recently there has been a lot of negative news about suppressing Tibetans and everything, saying the communist government is doing that. But that time was monarchy was there. It's not like that time it was something else and this time it is something else. The perspective is same. No anti-China activities. Nepal follows one China policy. It has always followed that.
So they're not Nepal. Nobody really in the Nepalese government is disputing the idea that Tibet is a part of China.
Tibet
Right.
is a part
So
of China. When we
yeah,
went to
and so
invade Tibet, the Qing dynasty really didn't like it. I think that the last invasion in 1792. I
mm,
think for no reason, just for expansion, Tibet we went reached to Lhasa, and the Qing dynasty really didn't like it. The
yeah.
problem with that was they just wanted to expand for absolutely no reason. Nepal wanted to, and later, of course, we didn't have good relation after that. But this mistake cost the entire subcontinent a lot because when British came after that, we needed help from China. But
Oh, right.
of course, who helps a country that invades them?
Because you just finished invading Tibet at that time. So now when the British were coming through.
Right.
All right.
Yes, and
Okay.
no
So
matter how much we pleaded, they didn't help us at all. Maybe we could have
oh, really?
things would have changed if China and Nepal would have aligned together at that time, but that didn't happen,
So
and even we
so
lost
what
a
were
lot
the
of territory. Chinese army was right outside Kathmandu. We lost big time.
Oh, so I mean, I think that's an important point to remember too. That it wasn't like it was the Qing dynasty protecting the territory during that time. You guys were fighting
Yes,
really against the not some sort of an independent Tibetan army. You were fighting against the Qing dynasty, which I think is an important
yes.
point because they say before the 1950s Tibet was independent. Well, if Tibet was independent, why would you be fighting? You wouldn't be fighting the Qing dynasty at that point.
No matter how many times I go through Nepal's history and interaction, it clearly shows that Tibet was not an. It was always under China. It clearly
Yeah,
makes that because a
from
lot
the
of
Yuan.
historians from Nepal has written about that too.
After that, when the British came through Nepal and then China didn't help, they grabbed a lot of that territory. I guess then the British occupied Nepal for a lot longer than they did Tibet in that case.
They didn't occupy. We had to sign a treaty because generally, because Nepal is so mountainous, they couldn't come and invade till the capital city, Kathmandu, at that point. But we signed a treaty, very humiliating treaty, that we lost so much. And when Britain left, we actually warned the Qing dynasty that South Tibet was going to be invaded, but they didn't take it. Like they thought the British can harm them or something. Of course, they thought that during those times, but even South Tibet was taken away. Then Nepal lost a lot of time. But when British left, no one got what they had.
You, oh,
after
you didn't
Nepal.
get your territory back, so that territory now has been ceded to India.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Wow, this is all stuff. I again, I wish I looked at this stuff beforehand, but we just kind of jumped on for this call. This is really interesting, and it's stuff that I'm going to look into a bit more. So, would that cause like are kids in Nepal, are they growing up learning about this history, or is this just something that you've had to figure out and research on your own, or it's fairly well known throughout Nepal?
It's well known. It's not that like we study when we are in school too. Like recently, the Indian media said Nepal is teaching about this now, but I was in school like 15 years ago. 15 years ago, I was in school learning about this. This is nothing new. Everyone knows about this over here. You learn in school, people tell you, that's how it is.
Right, right, yeah.
I think India's colonial approach never went after that also. They had the same policy after British left. Their foreign policy is quite colonial. They treat every smaller countries in the neighbors as their own, that we have to listen what they say. We can't be independent. Nepal, I think people in Nepal do not realize Nepal is in a very strategic position. It's how, if you look at Afghanistan connects South Asia to Central Asia. It borders Iran, and the problem is Nepal is in same position. A weak government. Our government isn't strong. More chaos in Nepal, better for them to launch any kind of activities. And the problem is we don't know what to do about all this. And plus, the government is really not efficient over here.
Are you worried at all that Nepal is going to start to become used more and more as a kind of a tool in these kind of fights that are seem to be increasing?
Yes, Nepal will be used. There's no, it won't be used. I don't know when this will start, but it will start very soon. The people's people might get influenced, but they might not. Of course, a lot of people in Nepal are quite upset with the government, the current government, because not very efficient, and they couldn't hold what they say. They couldn't do much of what they said. So there are protests going on against the government. There are protests going on. Like the party has been trying to split, but maybe election commission won't recognize the split party. That's what I heard.
Are most of the people kind of who are upset? They're upset about a domestic issue, kind of a thing, like kind of improving the country or infrastructure or education, or is there some sort of a main thing that people are unhappy about?
Development, a lot of corruption. In recent years, Nepal has been doing good in terms of development. Of course, it's slow. It's very slow. Many places outside Kathmandu are not very developed. Villages are still living in some different generation, some 100 years ago, like they used to live. There are many places like that over here.
Yeah, is that one of the reasons why I see? Because when you're on Twitter, you seem pretty positive about China. Is that because you're contrasting what China's been doing in terms of poverty alleviation, infrastructure, trying to kind of stamp out corruption? Did this play into your mind when you said, I really like what China's doing? Because you seem pretty positive on China. Is that part of the reason?
Yes, that is part of the reason. What a lot of development projects from China will benefit us if that can happen. But problem is India does not like it that much. If that exactly happens over here, we would develop a lot. I just want Nepal to develop as much as it can.
But they're not currently.
It's
They're not really cooperating with China in a meaningful enough way, in your opinion, in terms of leveraging that relationship to help build up Nepal,
the government is quite slow. I mean, when
like
I
many
read the
governments.
news, when I read a news about how China and Nepal's some, I think, trade and transit or something about trade and transit, the news made it look like it was China's fault. The headlines, as usual, but when I read inside, it clearly showed efficiency in Nepal governments. It was our government who was actually being slow on this one.
So, in regards to like Nepal cooperating with China more, and you're saying India won't like that, does India have the ability or to influence Nepal still in a way where they could derail some of these projects, or they don't really have any meaningful influence in Nepal at the moment?
India has influence. They always had,
They
they will always have, because um, culturally we are connected quite a lot, and still we depend on India for a lot of imports, a lot of things. That's why when we had an economic blockade, we all it was a humanitarian crisis. There's absolutely nothing. Hospitals, schools, everything started shutting down. Actually, the main reason was we didn't have electricity for 16 hours during those times per day. And when you don't have fuel, fuel came from India. When you don't have fuel, of course, there's no option than to shut down
what
hospitals,
what was the
everything.
reason for that particular blockade when that happened?
India said the southern part, Madhesh part of Nepal, these people were protesting against the constitution because they were not getting much recognition in constitution. But if India wanted at that point, there were many other places they could have sent fuel and everything we needed. Even earthquake relief material was blocked at that time. It was after some months after earthquake. That was
Oh,
that was one moment. After that moment, only a lot of people in Nepal started thinking, how can we even call a neighbor, friend, someone who does something like that to us? They could have sent from other sides. There were two, three places from where the protest was not happening. Uh, I asked a lot of people whether places where things can come inside Nepal. There was places from Darjeeling side. It would clearly have. They could have come from Sikkim Darjeeling side, but they
so
didn't.
they
They just
decided, they said, oh, this protest is interrupting the route for us. They could have chosen another route, but they used this as an excuse. So do you have any feeling as to what the real reasons were they did this blockade for? Was there any sort of other geopolitical item at play, or a policy or something like that? Like, do you have any theories on why they really did it?
one another reason was Nepal became a secular state, not a Hindu state. At that time, the prime minister was Narendra Modi. That was another problem also.
Okay. All right. And we're seeing a lot of tensions and things like that in India about the same thing. I mean, we're seeing, you've posted a lot of videos that were just shocking. I couldn't believe that this stuff isn't being aired, but Muslims being targeted in India and all that kind of stuff that you've been sharing. I've gotten most of my information from you, and I've looked into it more, and I couldn't believe that this isn't being aired out. But that seems to be a big thing about turning it into this exclusive Hindu state. But you might know a little bit more about it than I do.
When I have interacted with a lot of people from India on Twitter, it seems like the whole thing about Hinduism is twisted or something. It's not. It's very different from what Nepal has believed about Hinduism. Muslims are being targeted in India. It's nothing like. It's not that people don't know. Everyone knows they are being targeted a lot. India's influence in Nepal might come. Something like might happen is always there.
I think you might be underestimating how few people know about that overseas, though. I mean, if you were to talk to somebody in Canada or the U.S. about some of the stuff going on, or the level of the videos that you showed with police together with people throwing rocks at groups of Muslims and things like that, I don't think anybody knows about this in the West. But you're saying in Nepal, people know that this is going on.
Yes, like in Nepal, people are very religiously tolerant. They do not look at another religion in a bad way. We have had religious tolerance, and it's like we learn it in school. In school, every year I had to learn about religious tolerance. So
Oh,
that actually makes us very tolerant towards other religion. I have nothing. Everyone is allowed to have their own religion. They can follow, but you cannot harm other people. one main thing about religion is you should not be harming other people in the name of religion. India's version of
Yeah.
Hinduism is very different than us. Very different.
In the sense that it's less tolerant version of it.
Yeah, it's less tolerant. There are many
Right.
tolerant people even in India, but some amount of people are still they're different.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
many friends I have in India are quite good. They're very nice. They're very nice people. But like when I see India today, it shocks me. When I lived in India, it was very different. It wasn't what at that time. India was different, not what I see right now.
Are you noticing any kind of a slow ramp up of Nepal being used now, or not really, not quite yet? Are you seeing little signs of whether it be in the media or different things that are happening where your fears are maybe coming closer?
So the Tibetan bill that has been passed. In that bill, it's written that any government who we are not, so the US will recognize a Dalai Lama, and every country has to do it, has to recognize the same person. And for us, that's like, how can we do it? We have supported China in terms of Tibet because our history clearly shows Tibet has always been part of China.
So now you're quite active on Twitter and you're posting a lot of this stuff. Do you have like a hope or a goal, or like you kind of want to educate people about what's going on, or you just kind of want to get your ideas out? What are you hoping to do, and what are your hopes for the future of Nepal as well?
Actually, my hope is if China, Nepal, India, all of us in South Asia go with BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, we can be the economic hub of the world. The problem between India and China has to be solved because there is no way that one country is going to be spared. India, something happens to India, automatically the entire subcontinent is going down. Like South Asia, every country will be affected. So as I said, when Nepal went to invade Tibet, and next thing, and then you know, and then the thing was the Qing dynasty actually wanted the suzerainty in for Nepal. They wanted Nepal to be under them after we tried to invade Tibet, but Nepal wasn't going to allow, and we had Nepal had superiority complex, and even China had the same thing, and we kind of had like a cold war between us at that point. East India Company supported Nepal. The problem was they supported Nepal because they wanted to divide Nepal and China so that it would be easier for them to go and start doing what they came there for. And next thing we know, half of our territory is gone. South Tibet is gone. Exactly. And now you see how India is being played by US saying it's good. Now India and China's border row is like a bingo for them. Two powerful countries in the subcontinent fighting with each other. It's like
Yeah,
they're very happy. They're very
yeah,
happy.
it's really amazing that more people in India can't see through it. I mean, they've been treated with no respect by these kind of foreign imperialist powers before as well. Mind you, they did benefit from a lot of that land that was annexed from Tibet and Nepal. But from you standing on the outside, having some knowledge about India, having lived there as well, but standing from the outside view, it must be so clear how much they're being used and how dangerous it is for themselves, also, how dangerous it is for India. Because as soon as they've outlived their usefulness, as soon as all of the divides have happened and this whole region has been destabilized, the US's job is done. They wipe their hands clean and they go.
That's one thing is when the CIA and everyone supported the Kampas in Mustang region. After President Nixon's visit to China, they stopped getting fund and was stuck in one of the most remote places in Nepal. After that, they stopped getting funded. So
It's unbelievable.
after they're
Yeah.
done, they'll stop caring. It has
Yeah.
always been like that.
It's really remarkable that people can't see through this and see that this is what happens every single time, and they're just kind of creating a really bad situation for themselves. I mean, they did the same thing with the Hong Kong protesters too, right? They made all these promises. The Britain said, "Oh, your BNO passport, we're going to see if we can let you use it to come and move to the UK." Once it died down, that's it. They're done. They're done with them. Even Taiwan was like blocking Hong Kongers from coming in. All of these allies all of a sudden disappeared when they outlived their usefulness.
Yes, it's just to use them and then bye bye.
Discard them.
After that, people need to see through this. We've seen so many examples of this. And India has a lot of things like to develop the nation, which is they could have done so well. It's just they got lost. India could have done so well. I still have a lot of hope for India. They have so much of population, so much of manpower. Mm, Their education is also good in India. So they can do a
It's
lot. I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's
But
really
so
remarkable when you think. Yeah, when you think about it, like so many of the top companies in the U.S., the top executives are from India. I mean, they're coming over from India, whether it be Microsoft or all these other big tech companies. There's so many people from India who are extremely talented, and imagine if India could utilize this talent themselves. It definitely seems like a country that's so underutilized. I remember I interviewed Kishore Mahbubani, and I also saw him on another talk before where he was talking about, the biggest powers in the world before, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, where it was India and China, and it was this region. This was like the center of the world in terms of economic power. And he said there's going to be a time when it comes back here. And I mean, maybe that's part of the whole thing, that's why there's so much of an effort to create so many conflicts here, to create enemies between China and India and just destabilize this region. It really does seem like there's a panic to try to cause some sort of problem here to really just mess up that prospect.
exactly. The thing was China's BRI project, Silk Road project, that is actually going to benefit everybody, everyone, even in South Asia. That is the problem for the West. That will benefit as India being a developed country, the economy would go so well after that. Nepal, actually, in ancient times, India, Nepal, and China, this was like a road. For they used to trade. India used to trade to China from Nepal through Nepal, and this place was so rich. The whole entire continent was very rich. So that's exactly what China's BRI project could do. But then the whole so-called death trap, that is not true, keeps coming. Wolf warrior diplomacy, what is that? I do not understand. What is that?
It's really remarkable. It's really remarkable to hear the U.S. using that and saying that because, I mean, when China goes in and they deal with these countries, they're not doing it the same way that the U.S. has. Those ones are really a kind of a diplomatic form of trade where, you play by our rules or we overthrow your government or we create a coup against you, whatever it may be. But also to prevent countries from creating subsidies for food production because they want to keep these countries poor and reliant on them so that they can still get their resources for cheap. Like I remember one story about Malawi. Malawi, they went through a massive crisis, food crisis. And one of the guys in the government, I think it was the finance minister, broke ranks and he says, why we're in this situation is because when we took the WTO loan, they said we had to get rid of all of our grain supplies. We had to deplete all of our grain supplies and we couldn't put any subsidies in place for food production. It's a carefully crafted system to keep these countries poor so that they can be exploited and the West can get their materials for really cheap. China's doing it a different way. It seems like they're coming through and they're really looking for mutual benefit. I mean, of course, there's other people that say China still is peddling for power. They are looking for influence, but it seems like a much better option than what we have now.
It's a better option. There's a lot of projects going on in Nepal too. Like there's a cement factory which will be completed maybe quite shockingly, China's development works are it's very fast. I must say, like some of the project how they did was it takes years in Nepal. Anything will take years and years. Some of the Nepal government's project I've been hearing when I was young, and it hasn't happened till today. So China's projects are really quite fast. If
Yeah, yeah.
developing is more being more than happy because
Yeah,
Nepal is
just to let you
not
know, it's not
very
only a Nepal problem. Governments all over the world are the same. Canada also same thing. You hear about they're going to make a 25-kilometer train from Toronto to the airport. They talk about it first for 40 years. Then after they start, it will take another 15 years to make. And when it's done, it's not even the high-speed train that they promised. It's this slow, system. But yeah, no, China definitely does things really fast here. I mean, I've been here in Shenzhen for 12 years, and I just can't believe how fast things move here. But yeah, you imagine with China's infrastructure capabilities, with India's brain power, also with all these people who are going out to the U.S. to make, to build some of the biggest tech companies in the world. Imagine what this region could accomplish if they really worked together and didn't fall into this kind of geopolitical game. It's really kind of disappointing. It must be frustrating also for you to see this with such clarity, and probably goes into some of the angry tweets that you put out.
yes, because I have a lot of hope for India because India does have a lot of potential, a lot. It's just they're not using it properly. There's always internal conflicts and things like that does happen over there. And it seems like they're lost somewhere. But if India can pick themselves up, if the government can pick themselves up and actually start, they are spending a lot of money building a temple. Temple. Who needs temple? Why need so many temple?
I
Why
remember seeing a video. I can't remember if it was you who posted it. It was after they finished building a temple, they dug a trench around it and they dumped, I think it was 30,000 liters of milk or something like that into it to
Yeah.
basically bless the temple. And it was like, how many people are starving how many children are starving? And you're dumping 30,000 liters of milk to basically open this temple just as a gift to the gods when you could actually feed your own people who are starving. And that was so I think even a lot of people in India were outraged by that when I looked through the comments. They're like, "What
Yes.
the heck is going on here?"
That does I haven't seen that in Nepal. Like people do things like that. Like the largest animal sacrifice does happen in Nepal too. But as India's hunger index is very bad, and why spend so much on religion? Why is religion so much religion? Okay, it's important. I can understand, but why bring do things like that in terms of religion when people are actually starving?
Yeah.
That's not
No, it was
okay.
it was really a difficult sight to see. And you would think also at some point like people could take a step back and say, okay, hold on a second here. It's been, we've been aligning ourselves with the West. We've been advised by them. We've been pulling their propaganda line for them. We've been, helping to you push all this anti-China propaganda that America, a lot of it is being generated by America and American NGOs. And we've also emulated their political systems. We've tried to use Western political systems here in India. At some point, you got to step back and say, okay, so what has it done? Or compare it to China. How many people are still in poverty? How many people are being removed from poverty? How's the infrastructure? What's happening to the country, the GDP? And then also take into consideration that, of course, this infighting that's being stoked by the U.S. is going to delay the possibility of power coming back to this region. And people, I really hope, and I guess you do too, really hope that people will just eventually wake up and say, how can we just be tools like this? And start thinking about themselves, the long term, what the best options are for their own long term prosperity. It's definitely not what they're doing now.
And that this whole thing is not going to end well for them. This is not going to end. Just like I said, when after invading Tibet, China actually got not scared. They wanted Nepal to be under them. Like they wanted suzerainty power in Nepal, of course. And British and Nepal actually did not want that happen. It was kind of like we started hating each other. The Qing dynasty and Nepal started hating each other. At that time, the British actually supported Nepal, and that clearly shows the intention was not that Nepal is a country they like or anything. Next thing we know, we got invaded. We got invaded.
You've lost, yeah, and you lost your, yeah. It's,
We lost a
yeah.
lot of time. That's what Greater
It's like
Nepal was.
it's
It's
like
not
the
something.
ginger, yeah. It's like the gingerbread man jumping onto the fox's back, who's gonna swim him across the river. You know, Joe, jump up onto my nose, and all of a sudden your legs are gone.
We have to live with our neighbors.
Yeah.
It's better to have very mutual cooperation so that not only benefit you, benefit the entire region, people, to government,
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost, I mean, obviously they're doing the same thing with Australia. I know you follow a lot of this stuff too. They're really using Australia as a tool. And, you know, Australia is part of the Five Eyes Nation, which are pretty much all Caucasian kind of countries. And so maybe it's a little bit more understandable how you could persuade the public to want to align themselves with people who look like them rather than who live in their backyard. And I mean, it's not looking good for Australia. Also, how they're being used as an absolute tool, and I think it's probably much worse. Like, you follow a lot of the same stuff I do, like ASPI, the NGO in Australia, which is funded by the American Military Industrial Complex, which is advising the Australian government on how to treat China and what weapons to buy from them. I mean, it's unbelievable, and that must be a scary prospect if that's going to eventually be something that comes to Nepal. So I guess that's something you want to make sure doesn't happen. Also, with some of your, I guess you could call it activism, because you're educating a lot of people on your Twitter about some of the stuff that's going on.
Not really. I mean, people who see will see. People can take it in a negative way too. There will be people who take. We cannot make everyone understand. There will be people so brainwashed no matter what they won't understand.
What kinds of responses do you get on? I mean, you must get a lot of hate on Twitter for just being a little bit more positive about China.
I mean, this, yeah, I get a lot of hate. Some of those, they actually DM me some crazy things, crazy
Oh,
things. Like,
really?
and so, like, getting hate, it's normal. I do not take it very badly. People are like that. We cannot make everyone agree with us. People
The
hide.
most,
We
yeah, yeah. The most intense though, and I think you've probably experienced. I think you've probably experienced this too. Is when you get like the groups from India who arrange together. Like I don't know if they're troll farms or whatever, but when they come in a big group. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. I had it after my Tibet trip. I think you probably saw some of it online.
Yeah. And the thing, I started blocking them because I don't want to waste time. Before I used to fight a lot. What happens when you block one, they send someone else and say, you blocked this person. I get shocked.
Yeah, yeah.
How?
Like they're
Oh, Lord. I block someone and then that person sends someone else? That happens. They
yeah.
target they think I'm Muslim, so they target me in a very bad way. And they used to use words that I didn't understand. It was related to Islamic culture, which of course, I won't understand. I have lived around Hindus and Buddhists. I had to Google. It meant bad things I didn't know. But always, it's from India. It's always about religion, and I don't know why they think that way. Religion isn't. Why target someone with different religion?
Well, that
I
must have
don't
still been an
understand.
interesting experience for you, because for you to see how would they treat you if you were a Muslim, it kind of confirms a lot of the stuff that you've been posting, that the situation is pretty bad for Muslims in India right now. When they thought you were a Muslim, these were the kinds of things they were doing to you or saying to you and targeting and how they were targeting you.
For me, rather, it wasn't offensive because I don't know much about Islam. This few is what I'm learning. But for someone who actually follows the religion, that must be very offensive. That must be very so. Why offend someone's religion? Of course, some you haven't grown with the religion. When I was in school, when we learn religious tolerance, always we have been told always that never attack other people's religion because we haven't been born with that religion and we will never understand. After you are born, what your parents' religion is, you become that religion. But you will never understand since as we haven't grown up with that religion. So never attack. That's
Right.
what I have learned.
That's a really great way to raise a very tolerant society. Okay, so that's interesting. Did you have any other like we'll wrap this up, and I'm gonna start looking in. I'm now my interest is peaked in Nepal. I'm gonna look into more information about it. I kind of wish I had time to beforehand, so I could have asked you some more questions. But are there any other things that you're covering or talking about or researching or concerns you have, or other things that you wanted to mention, other topics, or are you we pretty much covered the main stuff?
Yeah, we've been pretty much covered.
We'll see if the trolls come out after this video again. Good luck. We had
Well,
I if the trolls come out again after this video. But you know, it was an interesting experience for me just talking about that before we wrap up. Yeah, when they came in the hundreds, if not thousands. And they didn't come with a particular argument. And I tried engaging with some of them. Some of them sent some DMs. And then after I was like, okay, this is too overwhelming. And I did the same thing as you. It was the first time I really started liberally using the block button.
no argument from there. Nothing. Just
Yeah.
just trolling. From start to finish, nothing. They cannot bring anything out. Even though how much source information we give, from their side, there's absolutely nothing. Instead of making noise.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, because I see your threads. You make some threads on some different topics and things like that. And the people who disagree with it, they're not disagreeing with the points. They're just there to name call or to say, say rude things. It's quite remarkable to witness. Well, okay, so I'm gonna wrap this up here, and I'm gonna look into some of this stuff a little bit more. Some of the interesting parts of history. Also, I don't know too much about that, the invasion from Nepal to Tibet and all this kind of stuff. It sounds like a really interesting story. So we'll wrap it up here. And just thanks for your time, and I'll still be following you on Twitter, and we'll get this video up soon.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to let me speak.
My pleasure. My pleasure.